through all these 7 phases, there were actually a lot of accusations against the election commission, and a lot of issues were continuously happening. One of the major issues were actually the delays in which the voter turnout is actually displayed. So we have to understand about the different aspects regarding that. So that particular news is actually the Supreme Court refuses to direct Election Commission of India to publish booth-wise records of voter turnout. So that particular topic of voter turnout is why this particular data that is called the 17C, the form 17C is actually important because of that particular topic, voter turnout. So what is actually happening is that when a particular election is actually happening, this association is this Association of Democratic Reforms, that is ADR. So this is one important organization, NGO, which is actually working in the field of election reforms and all. So they have done a lot of researches, and their reports are actually widely respected. So they go to the ground level reports and collect the data and create reports. They give petitions to the Supreme Court, to the government of India, asking for different things. So a lot of different reforms are actually brought about by the Association of Democratic Reforms, and it is that particular organization, ADR, which has gone to the Supreme Court to ask, then they ask Supreme Court to publish, or to ask Election Commission of India to publish the voter turnout data effectively. So that is a current affair event. But however, Supreme Court actually refused to ask Election Commission of India. Why actually that happened? We'll be dealing into that particular topic. And that ultimately the question is about the authenticity of the genuinity of the data which is actually released by Election Commission of India. And what is that particular problem is that once the election was completed in a day, for example, today if there is an election, once the election is completed, the Election Commission of India suggests that okay, around 60 or 50% of the polling actually happened. But after around 2 or 3 days, the Election Commission actually revised the data and said that around 55% of the people actually voted. 2 days back, they said that 50% of voters were voting, but after 2 days, they said no, the tally is actually 55%. So how this particular 5%, even 5% of increase is actually happening? So that is the thing, that is the issue, or that was the concern which was raised by the ADR, that is the association. So normally this thing actually happens, but a gap of just 1 or 2% was the maximum thing which was actually happening till now. But now in this particular election, almost 5% of increase of voting is actually happening after 2 days. So that is a very large cause of concern that was raised by this particular association. So now we are actually going into this, and they were telling that there is a possibility of manipulation. So that is why this particular topic is actually important. So now we have to understand what is the relation of this particular voter turnout data with the form that is actually called the 17C. So what is this 17C? That is actually we are going to understand. So when we think about this particular election and all these things, you have to keep in mind there is a particular bylaw that is actually called the Conduct of Election Rules in 1961. And according to the Conduct of Election Rules, there is actually Election Commission of India definitely mentions 2 types of forms. One is actually 17A, the second is actually 17C. So what are these 2 forms? That is what we are going to discuss right now. So what is actually 17A? 17A is actually all the data of all the different voters who came to the polling booth, who actually to cast vote and all. So whoever came to the polling booth to cast votes, whatever the voters list, all these things are actually in the 17A. So what is actually 17C? 17C actually comprises all the detailed data of voters who actually the votes are recorded. So this is actually the data of voters, and this is actually the data of votes polled. So all those voters who came, all those people who came, that is the data of 17A, and all the details of the votes are actually in the 17C. So 17C actually contains all the detailed data of all the votes recorded, the number of votes, actually the number of rejected votes. So all these, for example, some person, when a person comes, the polling officer can say that okay, your name is actually not in the particular polling slip and all, so you cannot vote. So for example, if other persons are actually not liable or rejected, all those data are actually included in the 17C. So 17A is a static data and 17C is a dynamic data. So 17C is all those people who came. And we have to also keep in our mind that there is actually the rules is there from the 1961 rules. There is a rule that by the end of that poll, for example, if election is happening today and after the end of that election, there is a polling officer, right? So this polling officer, this particular polling officer has to submit this particular form called 17C to the election commission, and this particular 17C has to be given, a copy of 17C has to be given to the candidates as well as their polling agents also, so that the candidate will know that how many people actually came or who all actually casted their vote. So all those things can be understood by the 17C form. So that is the importance of 17C, and to whom actually the polling officers can submit to the Election Commission of India, to the candidates and to the agents of the candidate. For example, there will be almost 50 polling booths in one particular constituency. So one particular candidate cannot go to every booth, right? So he actually appoints a lot of different official agents of the candidates. So this particular polling officer can give 17 to the candidates, of course, but there is one problem in that particular thing, that is only those rich parties or the higher national parties or state parties, that those candidates can actually afford to have agents. But what if actually I want to compete in the election? I may not have that much amount of money to appoint the agents in all the 50 booths. So then it is actually again another problem. So usually Election Commission of India used to publish that 17C document in the site and all, so that all the agents, all the people can actually view it actually transparently. So that was the thing actually happened recently, but used to be happening. But in the recent times, the Election Commission of India is actually taking a lot of delays to publish that particular data, and that is why the association actually went to the Supreme Court. But their Election Commission actually said that we are actually publishing it in a volunteer manner itself. You cannot actually force us to publish the data. We may publish, we may not publish, but it is our right. You are not supposed to force us on us. That is the particular thing that actually happened in the recent times. Now we have to understand about what are the parts in the 17C, which is the important limelight. It is actually the limelight right now, because they are not, Election Commission in India is actually not publishing the 17C in the website. So what is this 17C? That is what we are going to understand right now. So you have no need to worry if you cannot read it. The letters are very small. I just wanted to give you an understanding that this is one very simple form, the 17C, and there are a lot of different data actually have to be entered by the polling officer. For example, where this particular election is actually happening, what is the name and number of the polling station, the EVM, the electoral voting machine, that the EVM in which you cast the vote. So what is the identification number of that particular EVM, and total number of electors in that polling station. For example, that polling station may have around 1,000 to 1,200 people will be coming to that particular polling station. So what number of people actually coming to the polling station, number of voters actually, or the total number of voters who entered to vote. So there will be 1,000 people, but only 700 come to vote. So the number of people actually in that polling list, the number of people who actually come to vote, and the number of people who decided not to vote, number of people who are not allowed to vote or rejected, etc., and the total number of votes recorded by the voting machine, etc. All those data are actually included in 17C. So this is a very important document in which we can understand if there is any discrepancy, we can actually easily catch that particular thing. So that is why this particular document is important, and that is where actually these kind of associations are asking the Election Commission to publish the data. And what is there regarding the 17C document, you have to understand that it actually has two parts. So there is part 1 and part 2 is actually there. So what are the two parts actually? Part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is actually about all the data which we require is actually in the part 1. That is actually all the crucial information. For example, the EVM ID, just like we just mentioned in this particular, this is the part 1. So all the EVM IDs, total number of voters in that booth, total numbers who actually cast their vote, all those elected votes and all these things are actually recorded in this particular thing. And before the election starts, there are actually number of votes the polling officer cast, the test votes. That is, if the EVM is working properly, they just try to test that particular EVM by switching different buttons. So that test votes cannot be counted in the actual election, right? So number of test votes and all these things are actually recorded in part 1. And what is actually in the part 2? The part 2 actually comprises of the different results. So after the counting actually happened, the result had to be published, right? So that result will be entered in part 2. And so with this particular thing, if that particular form 17C is actually available with the candidate, or the agent of the candidate, he can or they can actually easily match the particular result of EVM with the result. So they can actually understand if there is any discrepancy. So that is why this particular form 17C is extremely important, and that is why the people are actually, or associations are asking the Supreme Court and Election Commission of India to publish this particular data. And the next thing about EVMs is that what is the recent issue? The definitely the Association of Democratic Reform, they actually asked the Supreme Court to ask Election Commission to publish the data, and they wanted Election Commission of India to publish the data within 48 hours. So once this election is done, for example, if there is an election today, Saturday, so this particular data has to be published before Monday. So that is how the method is actually transparent. What if the Election Commission is delaying this particular data, and after 1 week they are saying that almost 70% of the polls are actually polled? So then we may not have that proper trust with the Election Commission also. So that to maintain that trust also, this particular thing is actually extremely important. What? The disclosure is actually extremely important. And the next thing we have to keep in mind that just like we said, the 17C is only to the candidate and agent, but this is actually only working when only with those rich kind of state parties and national parties only. Those small parties or small individual candidates, they may not be able to afford this particular. They cannot actually go to each and every single booth to take the 17C because they will be alone. They cannot actually, they don't have any groups or members together to do that. So that is actually not practical also. So ultimate solution is actually to upload this particular data. And what Election Commission actually said that it is actually only a voluntary. Election Commission said in the Supreme Court itself that we are only doing it voluntarily. You cannot never force us. So that is we are not legally bound to do this thing. This was a convention set by the Election Commission of India to enhance transparency, but you cannot always force us to do this particular thing. So that was the thing done by the Election Commission, and you know that you should know that earlier the exact number of votes was actually declared by the Election Commission after the polling date and all. But now in this particular election, the exact number of votes are actually not being declared. Only the percentage is actually being declared, and this is one of the things which these associations and opposition parties are criticizing the Election Commission. Why you are actually not publishing the exact number of votes after the polling date? Only you are saying about the percentage. Why the number of votes are actually not being declared? And the ultimate thing is about what can be the solution of these things. The solution is simple. That is, you should Election Commission, if it is possible, should upload this particular document 17C assigned when it gets in the website, so that every people, all the people, normal common population, all the candidates, all their agents can access it very easily, rather than giving it to the agents and candidates only. So that is one important thing, so that there will be more transparency will be there, and more trust will be there with the Election Commission. And regarding that particular topic of 17C, we have to also keep in mind that Election Commission of India, when this case came to the Supreme Court of India, they actually invoked, or they just quoted one article, that is actually Article 329 Section B from the Constitution of India. And you don't have to worry again with that entire sentence, because this is an extremely complex sentence. So as we know, when we study about the Constitution and different articles, no need to study that article from head to toe, because it is extremely complex. Just understand the meaning of that particular article, that is 329B. So this article means that Election Commission says in Supreme Court about this article that no other party, no other judicial intervention, no other party can actually intervene in the election procedure unless there is actually until it is actually Election Commission. So only Election Commission can actually do all these activities. So once the election is declared, no other court, no other Supreme Court, all other courts cannot interfere in the election processes easily. So that is this particular clause, that is 329 Section B. So when the Election Commission invoked this particular article, Supreme Court was of course forced to tell the association that your petition is not valid because this is the election process going on, and according to this particular article, we cannot actually, judicial intervention is not that easy. So they actually rejected that particular plea. So that is the particular article, that is prevention of judicial intervention and any kind of intervention in the election procedure once the election is actually declared. And the last thing is actually about the silence period. So what is actually called the silence period? Because every party gets the equal amount of time, right? Even though they may not have the equal amount of money to, for this election advertisements and all these things, but they have equal amount of time. So that particular time is actually set just before the 48 hours of the actual election day. For example, if today is the election day, the silence period actually starts from Thursday morning. So Thursday, Friday will be silence day, and then Saturday will be the election. So till Thursday, that is till Wednesday evening, you can have election, advertisements and all these things can happen. All the campaigns can happen. But Thursday and Friday, the 2 days before the election, will be silence day. There will be no campaigning. You cannot actually go for major events, large events or large rallies, etc. for the thing. You have to remain in silent. So you don't have to, you cannot actually publish your ideas, publish your ideologies or political campaigning data and all these things in any media kind of. That is one other thing when one other issue in the recent times, that is, even in the silence period, some of the leaders are actually trying to project themselves in the camera and TV and all these things. So silence period is meant to be silent. So if one person or one party or two parties or some other parties or some people, when they try to project themselves in the silence period, then it is actually inequality. So that is one other issue. It is a very other big issue. So we are only talking about 17C right now, so we can skip that particular thing. So there is no political campaign in that particular thing. There is no ads in the TVs. There is no election matter should not be displayed and all. And no similar setup or no entertainment purposes can be done, which actually propagates this particular election campaign. There is no exit polls, no results campaign. Others should not be allowed. So that all things are actually said in the silence period. So on the election is completed, once the 7 stages of elections are actually polling are completed in the current Lok Sabha elections, then only exit poll can come. So exit poll cannot actually come after the first stage of election. So what if actually after the first stage, if all the media is telling one party is actually winning, so which means that automatically all the people will vote for that particular party in the second, third and other stages also. So there is no exit polls. There should not be any exit polls till the last stage of election. For example, in this election, 7 stages are there. Today is the 7th stage. And once this today evening, when the 7 stages are actually completed, finished and all, then only exit polls will come. So today evening, when you open your TVs and all, you'll automatically see different TVs actually discussing about the possibilities of the new government. And all these things are actually happening under the silence period, and all these things are happening under the Representation of the People Act 1951, based on which all the elections are actually happening. The major elections are actually happening in India. So that is the topic of Form 17C, and we were discussing about some of the things about electoral reforms.